Hello, I want to show you the recording of my presentation at the annual conference of the Astrological Association of Great Britain in the end of October 2021, and the presentation was about declination and the aspects of declination. Unfortunately, the quality of recording was very low and there were multiple technical problems before the presentation and during it, so I had to cut this recording and take the better parts of it and to repackage them into this new video. I still think there is a lot of interesting information there, and I hope you will enjoy it. Declination. And it has a secret aim to convert as many people as possible into the use of the aspects of declination. And for those who are already using them, maybe to give you a few good examples and a few good arguments for their use. We know in general astrology that the most important aspect in astrology is probably conjunction. Opposition is also quite important and useful, and squares and trines, but there were astrologers in not so distant past who thought that there is something else, something even more important and more interesting. Zadkiel, the astrologer of the 19th century, used to say that parallel is the most powerful of all aspects. And Bishop Culpeper wrote that the most powerful aspect of all is the parallel of declination. Conjunction and opposition are almost equal to the parallel, but not quite. And Charles J., one of the most advanced, I would say, astrologers of the 20th century, used to say that some charts cannot be interpreted in their main thrust if declination is omitted. There is also another saying by Charles James. He used to say that by not using declination, you are losing about half of the information available for you in the astrological charts. Well, about half is not precise because there are charts where the aspects of declination are predominant. You won't understand anything without that, and I will show you a few examples today. But there are also charts that are all unique. There are also charts where there are very few aspects of declination, and the normal aspects of longitude are quite informative. Interesting. The interesting thing is that all these astrologers were doing a kind of astrology which I would call a real world astrology. Astrology dealing with real events in the world around us. For example, Bishop Culpeper was an astrometeorologist. And in astrometeorology, if you predict that there will be a good weather over the weekend, and then you miss a parallel between Venus and Uranus, you will be wrong. And people will see that you are wrong. Charles James worked a lot with financial astrology, and he was very keen on methods of forecasting, and he was very good at that. So I would maybe those aspects of declination are especially important in the areas of astrology dealing with real life. Unfortunately, in our current world, there are many astrologers who either don't know at all what declination is and the aspects of declination, or maybe know but think that this is something not important, this is something secondary. And there are actually a few obstacles for adoption of the aspects of declination. And one of them is perhaps the fact that our astrology in the 20th century became very much psychological. I think in the beginning of the 20th century, Alan Vail started telling people that astrology is not predicting events. No, astrology is about describing people's characters, their psychological traits, their talents, the ways of development, and so on. Interesting, important things, but it lost its ability to actually predict something that was done for centuries. And maybe when you're dealing with something which is invisible, you don't need to be that precise. You're not afraid of losing a parallel between Venus and Uranus, because, okay, you can describe that in some other way. The other reason is that we're used to visual perception of charts, especially in the end of the 20th century and now, because you can print out a colorful chart very easily in a few seconds without any effort. And then you can see immediately. You can see the pattern of planets in it. You can see a pattern of aspects, T-square, grand trine. And it's easy to tell something immediately. The problem with declinations is that you won't see them in a natal chart. In an ordinary astrological chart, they're invisible, and I will show you why in a little bit. And the third major problem, as I see it, is the support by software developers. Again, I'm hoping to show you that even the most contemporary, even the most advanced software packages just don't do things with declination, which they should do, I think. But there are workarounds around that. Well, the first question is, what is declination? And I think that most of you, if not all of you, already know the answer, because you came to this presentation after all. But let me try. We'll always need to find a way to explain what declination is to some unprepared audiences. And let me show you how I'm trying to do that. And usually astrologers in the articles, in the books, they start showing astronomical diagrams. And they say, you know, declination is an angular distance of the planet from the celestial equator. And then you need to tell what the celestial equator is, and then you need to tell what the ecliptic is, and then a few more things, and then you discover that actually in astrology, when we're using declination, it's a dimension from a different coordinate system. So it becomes very quickly very complicated, and many people in the audience will either fall asleep or decide, no, that's too difficult for us. We're never going to do this declination thing. And look around, most astrologers don't use it at all. So I think we don't need to explain all the technicalities of declination to enable people to use it. Because, for example, imagine you need to explain someone how to watch TV. There are two ways. One way is take schematics, explain everything about television, how electrons move, you know, create an image. The other thing is you can give remote control, tell them this is the button to switch on, this is the button to control sound, and this is the button to switch channels, something like that. So I think we can do the same with declination. We can give people a remote control. So we can explain it in a simplest way and then show where to find it. And that's it. And people can find it. They can see that it works. And if they want all the astronomical details, they can go and read. It's everywhere. But it's not necessary, actually. And my definition is still maybe a little bit complex. But the gist of it is that declination is the second dimension. Then I can add that it complements zodiacal position to precisely define the position of the planet in the sky. But the keyword, the second dimension. Okay, but what is the first dimension? Why we need the second? Well, if we look at an astrological chart, any astrological chart, doesn't matter. This is the chart of the coming new moon. How do we define the position of the planet? By its position in the sign and degree and minute of the zodiac. Easy. But that's just one dimension. There's one dimension which is called ecliptic longitude, but doesn't matter. Astronomers would say that this Mars is at 213 degrees 33 minutes. We say it's 3 degrees 33 minutes Scorpio, but it's the same thing. It's just one coordinate, one dimension. Why do we need something else? Well, there is an ancient city called Edinburgh, which happens to have the longitude of 3 degrees west. And there is another ancient city in Mali, in Africa, called Timbuktu. And it also happens to have the longitude of 3 degrees west. And if we were using in geography just one dimension, we would say that they're in conjunction, but they're very close to each other, almost the same place actually. But that would be wrong. That's why in geography we use the second dimension, which is latitude, right? And if we define both longitude and latitude, we know that Timbuktu is different from Edinburgh. They're very far from each other. In astrology, in astronomy, planets don't go that far from each other. But if you're working with stars, with fixed stars, or with asteroids, you quite can be mistaken when you see a conjunction in a normal astrological chart. It could be like Edinburgh and Timbuktu. And more astrological example. You see two charts, and you can probably tell me that these are new moon charts. This is the new moon of the 4th of November, the coming one. This is the one after it, the 4th of December. How do you know that it's a new moon? Because the sun and the moon are in the precise conjunction, in both of them. But the interesting thing is, this is the total solar eclipse. In this new moon, the moon will actually close the sun. But in this it won't. Why? The charts themselves don't show anything. Well, astrologers know that the proximity of lunar nodes can tell us that it's probably an eclipse, but they're not very close in both charts. So you can't see declination, the second dimension, in an ordinary astrological chart. It just, we can imagine that declination is measured like perpendicular to the plane of the chart. A planetary declination can be a little bit above the chart or a little bit below it. It's just not here. It's in the second dimension. There is a way to see the second dimension. At least if you are using solar fire. Solar fire, it used to be a wonderful software in the 1990s because it displayed the parallels and contra-parallels of declination in the chart, like gray arcs. Now it doesn't do that anymore. But it offers this very interesting page, it is called, I think. Page, it's called Declination or something like that. There are pages, numerous pages in SolarFire for different purposes. And you can just use this page, and here is the same chart for the coming new moon, the 4th of November. But here you see, this is the scale of declinations. It shows where actually planets are. And you can see that the moon is a little bit at a distance from the sun. So they're not overlapped, so this is not an eclipse. Actually, Jupiter is closer to the sun. So in declination, Jupiter has an aspect with the sun, whereas in the chart itself, we can say that there is an aspect between the sun and Jupiter. And you can see the declinations here, listed here. And every astrological software actually will give you these figures of declinations for every planet. And here is the chart for the 4th of December, full eclipse. You can see that the moon and the sun, well, still not on top of each other, but the distance is smaller. And you can see, I will tell you in a moment that in declination, we are usually using the oval of 1 degree. That's a popular oval.
Sorry, excuse me. I can't really see the declinations because you're right in front of it.
Ah, okay, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. So this is a very, very useful scale because on the right-hand side, you have northern declinations, southern declinations, and on the left-hand side, you can see northern declinations. So if there is a contra-parallel or parallel, you will see them. easily. A very useful tool. So, to summarize the theoretical information about declinations, there are two. Well, declination can be, the value of declination can be from 0 to 90 degrees, but usually planets, hot, it's very hot, but usually planets are within 30 degrees. And there are two aspects in declination, only two, parallel and contra-parallel. Parallel is when two planets have the same declination, both by value and by sign, both north or both south. And contra-parallel when two declinations are equal by value, but have different signs. One of them is north, the other is south. And the popular O is 1 degree. That's the kind of very quick summary of what there is about declination. But how do we prove? How do we prove that people didn't spend their time in vain, all this effort? All this effort to learn about declinations, not in vain. Well, we can take a natal chart and find some interesting aspects of declination there, but that's a difficult part because person's character and talents are huge, enormous topic, and whether they have this talent or not. So it's possible. I'm sure you will find with declinations some interesting connections in any natal chart, almost any natal chart. But it's as a way of proving that declinations are important and useful, it's difficult. You can use transits or progressions, methods of forecasting. And actually, you know probably Geoffrey Cornelius, a very well-known British astrologer, who wrote the book, The Moment of Astrology. And I think he devoted a whole chapter to explain the problems with Princess Diana's chart. And to put it briefly, when she died, astrologers all over the world tried to find what are the aspects, why don't transits or progressions or whatever don't show anything, why astrology is mute. They couldn't find any symbolism descriptive for her death. But I could tell, if you were using declinations, you would find some interesting aspects. But still, this is a difficult path. I think that the best and the easiest path to show, or way to show why declinations are useful and important is in synastry, especially studying non-trivial relationships. What do I mean by non-trivial? When people are basically going crazy to get someone, you know, they ignore what's common in this society. They ignore their career. They ignore their position. They just want to get married with this person. That's it, full stop. Of all the world. And in these cases, quite often you will see that the common aspects of longitude, conjunctions, trines, and so on, are not telling us anything, or telling very little. And here's a good example, my favorite example is Prince Harry and Meghan. Just think about it. He's a British prince. He could marry anyone. He probably had many candidates for a spouse, but whom he selected? A woman, a foreigner, a divorced woman with quite a substantial previous personal history, 3 years older than him. And he not, I expect that, I would think that royal family wasn't very happy. And they put a lot of pressure on him, I would think, I don't know. But he still married her, and not just married. Many astrologers looked at their synastry and they say, oh, that's not for long. They don't have any synastry at all. And, but he married her, and they have quite a substantial life, and their union is so strong that they left the royal family. Well, I might say in a wrong way, but I don't, but you probably understand what I mean. So let's have a look at the synastry. This is a matrix or a table of agreed of the mutual aspects created using Astrological. A wonderful software, I like it. But look, yeah, okay. I circled some of the most precise aspects. Let's have a look. What brings them together? What makes them a unit, an item? The most shocking thing here is, look, personal planets. They have no aspect. Well, I should say that I'm using only aspects within the orb of 3 degrees, because the most precise things are most precise. And I'm not using the angles of the chart, because I'm not certain about the angles unless I rectify the chart, and I haven't rectified this. But these are precise planetary aspects between them. And the personal planets from the Moon to Mars show no aspects. Okay, what are other aspects? Her Sun is square his Saturn. Is it a good aspect for synastry? I wouldn't say so. His Sun is square her Neptune. Is it a good aspect for synastry? Perhaps not. So what exactly brings them together? Why he married her? Maybe he didn't have any other girls. Okay? Here is a chart. Here are the aspects between Prince Harry and Cressida Bonus, one of the candidates to become his wife. And look, it's a totally different picture. Look at this trine between their Venuses. A very precise trine, quite precise. Sextile quincunxes between Venus and Mars. We can understand why they liked each other. There is a bit of Uranus, which is, well, it makes relationships interesting, but not very stable. There are some other trine. Her Sun is trine his Pluto. It's much better than square Saturn. Wouldn't you agree? So, just looking at the aspects of longitude, I would say, I don't know, why he didn't choose Cressida Bonus, why he chose Meghan. And this is, remember I told you about the lack of software support, and this is what it shows. Astrological won't ever show you the aspects of declination between two people. Longitude, you have it. Declination, no. So what I did, I contacted a software developer. He's developing so-called astroprocessor Zeus. I will tell you a little bit about. It's now in the beta version. I wanted to have something ready by this conference, but it wasn't ready. And on my request, he implemented this table. It's not as well designed as the previous one, but it shows us both the aspects of longitude and declination. And look what we see here. His Sun is in parallel with her Moon, and her Sun is in parallel with his Moon. And some people say parallel is better than a conjunction, stronger, more important. So it's a mutual Sun-Moon contact between them. Luminaries, you know, that's something the most essential. And I think there are criteria of whether people will get married, probably even from Ptolemy, which say that the moon of one partner should conjoin the sun of the other, or the moon of the other, or the ascendant of the other. But this is one of the classical signs of match, and it's mutual between them. Well, and we can see there are some other good and interesting aspects here, but this is the foundation. This is a rock solid foundation for their relationship, and you can see it only in declination. And what about Cressida Bonus? Nothing between the luminaries. Still some aspects, yes, but nothing as strong as that. Nothing as striking as that. That's one example. Another example, Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson. British king who abdicated the throne to be able to marry this twice divorced American woman with a very substantial personal history, but he didn't listen. And he sacrificed not just his career, because being a king is a lot more than a career. It's the whole life. I don't know. He just sacrificed his life with this woman. Let's have a look at their synastry in longitude. Again, the person personal square, Moon to Mars. Her Sun is square his Mars. I think they had some quarrels at some point. That's it. This is what we can say by looking at the aspects of longitude. Some other aspects, yes, but the main thing, it's empty. Now, let's have a look at the aspects of declination. Their suns are in a precise, very precise 1 minute off parallel. Just their hearts are together, you know, joined. Their hearts are joined. And her Venus is in parallel to this joined sun. And his Jupiter is parallel to the suns. And his Jupiter is parallel Venus. I think this is the foundation he chose to sacrifice his kingship, or to abdicate the throne. Okay. Another classical example, Prince Charles. You know the story, I won't tell you. Well, very briefly, he had a beautiful young wife with 2 kids, but he decided to stay with his beloved woman from his previous life. And again, let's have a look. There are some aspects between personal planets. Her Sun is trying his Sun good. Her Mercury is trying his Sun. They can communicate easily. But if you look at this, does this explain the strength of their link? No. Before showing the aspects in declination, I will show you the natal chart of Camilla. It's made in that astroprocessor Zeus, a little bit rough on the edges perhaps, but it shows all the necessary information. I wanted to show you that her Venus and Moon are in a precise conjunction in the same degree. They don't make an aspect in declination though, because you can see that the declination of her Moon is 2615. Maybe you know about out-of-bounds planets. She's an out-of-bounds Moon. Basically, it's a different topic related to declination, but not for this talk. She's a person not like goddess, let's say, briefly. So, but there is still a very precise conjunction in longitude. So the Moon and Venus, and if I return to this previous slide, what shocked me, they have no aspects between their Venuses at all. Look, their Venuses have no aspects to the other partner's chart, and this is about love, isn't it? In longitude. And I would think that Charles probably had a way to appreciate this conjunction of the Moon and Venus if he loves her so much. Let's have a look. Aspects of declination. Here is Camilla's Venus, and it's in contra-parallel to Charles's Mars. It's in contra-parallel to his Jupiter. It's in parallel to his Uranus. It's in parallel to his Pluto, and the aspects are quite precise. So now we can understand why he loves her so much. And one last example, Clooney, George Clooney. Not an extraordinary example, he didn't abdicate any throne, but he was a bachelor, a lifelong bachelor. I read a story about him that during his relationships with some girl, he bought a pig, I don't know, to celebrate whatever. And that pig lived with him for many, many years, and he was joking that this is my longest relationship, the pig. And but now he got married. Why? Okay, let's have a look at the aspects of longitude, shown to us by the glorious Astrological. By the way, I contacted them and asked them to implement the aspects of declination. They didn't even answer. Yeah, who knows declination, you know. There are some interesting aspects. I like this, his Moon in conjunction with her Mercury, because I've read a story how they met the first time and they were chatting and chatting and chatting, they couldn't stop. This, her moon, trying his Venus, is actually not reliable because we don't know her time of birth. This, her moon, can be anywhere. Again, there are some interesting, some squares, yes. Sun square Venus, Sun square Sun. But again, probably he had some other women with whom he had better synastry, I think, in the past. I don't know. Let's have a look at aspects of declination. Look, their suns, not just in a square, they're in a precise contra-parallel. Their moons, they're in parallel. And remember, I told you that we don't know the time of birth for Ahmad, so we don't know where is the moon. Yeah, but we know the declination of the moon, because her moon, you can check on the ephemeris, it didn't move much in declination on that day of her birth. So they do have this parallel between their moons. And this Moon-Mercury connection is reciprocal now, because her moon is in conjunction, or his moon is in conjunction with her Mercury, and there is a parallel the other way around. So the chart becomes a lot more meaningful. The relationships become a lot more meaningful. So, okay. So that was the relationships, and I hope I showed you some good examples where you, yes.
Is there a difference in meaning between the parallel and the contra?
Good question. Just I was thinking whether to mention this now. All right. So there are two groups of astrologers in the world. One group believes, and there are some important astrologers there, like Charles Carter, Ronald Davison. They say it's the same aspect. Parallel, contra-parallel, no difference at all. But you can read in old books like William Lilly, perhaps, that parallel is akin to a conjunction, and contra-parallel is similar to opposition. And there is another group of astrologers, Charles Jane is in it, which says, yeah, they're very different. Contra-parallel is really like an opposition. So, and both have very strong arguments. I'm listing those arguments in my 4-hour webinar on declinations and out about planets, but now we just simply don't.
The distance from the ecliptic.
The distance from the ecliptic is ecliptic latitude, and we don't use it. Well, some astrologers do use it, but not many astrologers, because the values of the ecliptic latitude are quite small. We need to use very narrow orbs there. And declination, I will show you a picture, you'll get the slides back. It's get an additional emphasis. There is a cycle of the sun when it goes to maximal north declination, then to maximal south declination, and we involve that cycle. And it has some very, very old traditional astrology value. Anticia is actually, Charles Jane calls us one of the 3 kinds of parallels. So it's a little bit strange because we're using declination from the equatorial system of coordinates, and we're using longitude from the ecliptical system of coordinates. But this combination works very well.
Can we draw the synastry grid with declinations in solar fire?
With declinations, no other software can do this.
Yeah.
No other software can do that, as far as I know.
But can you look at, sorry.
The question from the audience was how to create the synastry grid with parallels and contra-parallels in SolarFire or any other software. And Alexander was saying that it's currently not possible apart from the program he was showing. And so I'm asking as well whether you can look at visually at both declinations and kind of compare them eye by eye, or not really?
You can. What I do, if I don't have anything else but Astrogold, there are listings, you know,
Yes.
and those listings show declination, and you can just
Okay.
manually
Yeah,
compare them.
You can do it with self-fire.
Can you?
Yeah,
Or I just don't know how to.
yeah.
The synastry,
There's a thing called an aspect set where you choose which aspect you'd like to have in your grid. And one of the options there is parallel and contra-parallel. And you can decide upon your board, whatever it may be.
Okay.
that's good.
And,
Thank you very much. I didn't know that. I will try to figure out how to do that. Yes, please.
I will somebody from the audience advised that there is an option on Solar Fire how to create the synastry grid with parallels and contra-parallels, going into the aspect set and then picking the relevant options. Thank you.
Please.
You've shown us examples of synastry. How much research have you done with other charts? Are you saying that you can only see a connection between two people through declination?
No.
Or if there's,
No.
if it's missing in the longitude
There are all sorts of cases. They're all different. Our relationships are unique. And sometimes you can see relationships which are very clearly described by the aspects of longitude. And sometimes there are no aspects of declination of interest between the partners. Can be easily.
So you're saying between partners who've got together, there are no aspects either way? Or it's just not going to work out as a relationship?
No. It's fine. The relationship can work if they have a lot of important, meaningful aspects of longitude. Why not? It can. But sometimes they cannot. I chose specific examples where the aspects of longitude just don't tell us anything.
It's because as a consulting astrologer, especially having worked on an astrology line for a number of years and a few years ago, the most frequently asked question is whether a relationship is going to end up in marriage. So I presume from what you're saying, you make a very good case for the declination in aspects coming together. So one, if you don't see it in the ordinary chart, look at the declinations and it may be there. So it's a good way of
Yeah,
able to
absolutely,
say to the
absolutely.
couple, yes.
I'm just saying, look at the declinations every time you study a chart or a relationship. Perhaps you will find something
Because it will
different.
show something that
Yes,
is
something
missing
else, something else.
in the
Yes.
longitude.
If it is in longitude, that's fine. They could have conjunctions in longitude, sun, moon, neutral, but that's very rare.
So we've only got half the story, in other words, if you don't look at the declination.
Or maybe less than a half sometimes a half. Sometimes longitude tells us everything.
There's a question from the audience. What do you think the stigma is, if any, in the modern usage of declinations?
Sorry.
What do you think the stigma is, if any, in the modern usage
I
of
think
declinations?
the most problematic thing about declination is the way how people explain what it is, and then people who are not technically inclined just can't accept that. They think it's not necessary. It's just some technicality they can live without. And also the example of many astrologers around the world. So many successful astrologers never use declinations.
Why do you think it went out of fashion, so to speak?
I think that when astrology was becoming very psychological, it was because yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but that was exactly my answer.
Yes,
So
yes.
declinations, they do not have like psychological meaning in natal charts.
They do. I think they do.
And could you
It's-
explain
it's
the
just-
difference?
It's just a little bit more difficult. You need to apply some effort to find the declination, software packages to find that aspect set, to figure out how to use it.
And when I find it, and I'm looking at my conjunctions, for example, in longitude, and then I'm looking at my conjunctions in declinations, what's the difference? Like,
I don't think there is a lot of difference. There is a subtle difference,
so
maybe.
the interpretation is the same?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Would it the power of declination, will it not vary depending on the planet? For example, if you have Jupiter and Saturn, which are large gaseous planets, supposing there a power between them, it could be strong, regardless of whether they're close or far apart. But, you know, if you've got an out, you know, with Neptune or something like that, or you've got Mercury, they're less strong in terms of their effect.
I think
you've got the sun and the moon in parallel, it's going to be very strong, isn't it?
I think we should apply here the same rules or considerations as with the aspects of longitude. It depends on the status, on the zodiacal status of the planets, what planets are, and so on and so on. In which houses they're angular or cadent, or, you know, it all makes sense. It all influences it.
We have another question from the audience. Mark is asking, any views on Charles James' different view on declination orbs?
Orbs. Yes. There is Charles James offers a totally different approach to the orbs of declination. It's just a little bit more advanced topic, which I didn't want to cover. But Charles James, I covered in a lengthy webinar. But Charles James believed that the orb in declination depends on the declination. When the planets are close to the equator, when the declination is close to zero, the orb should be quite substantial. For example, if your orb in longitude is 5 degrees, it can be 2 or 3 degrees in declination. But when they go closer to the tropics or to the maximum declination, they stay longer there. So he thought it would be fair to greatly reduce the orb and to use maybe a few minutes. So that's something a bit more advanced, I would say, because you can't really manually use that. Imagine you comparing, taking each aspect in declination and thinking which orbit should use and computing it and so on. All right. Let me finish with the slides, and then if you'll have a few minutes of time,
Sure.
then I will answer them. I'm showing you the favorite example of Charles James, when he was showing the importance of declination in a natal chart. This is the chart of Walt Disney. It's written there, not seen from here, doesn't matter. Walt Disney, you know Walt Disney, the creator of all the miracles in the world, in the cinema, yeah. And very interestingly, Neptune is placed in the 10th house, and geometrically, it's a very meaningful position opposite to the other planets, but it almost has no aspects. That's surprising. Some semi-square, some opposition, some quincunx, nothing of interest, unless you look into declination. Then everything is connected on his chart, in declination. Look at this Neptune. Contra-parallel with the Sun, contra-parallel with Venus, contra-parallel with Jupiter, and so on. All the planets are connected. This is an extraordinary chart. You won't see that many aspects of declination in many charts. This is unique. But still, unique case is also a case. And this is a picture I promised to show you, just not a very technical, more like illustrative way to show how the Sun is moving. The red line is the celestial equator, and the Sun crosses it at vernal and autumnal, how to say in English, at equinoxes. And then its declination is 0. But then it goes, this is the summer, and it comes to the 22nd of June, 21st, when it enters Cancer, the Tropic of Cancer, and it has a maximal declination at that time, maximal northern. And then it goes again, and in winter it has maximum southern declination, just an illustration how everything moves. And I wanted to show you a unique website, astro.com, created by Alois Strandl, who got a prize yesterday. I congratulated him immediately, I know him personally. And his wonderful website, it offers ephemeris with declinations. Just wanted to show you that you can get them easily. The site's got a new design, but still you can find it. I think it's in All About Astrology, and you can come to this page. There are ephemeris for all the centuries in PDF format, free, totally free. You just need to find this section with declination and latitude, and then click, and then you open a page, and this is how the whole page looks. These are ephemeris in longitude, these are in declination and latitude, and this is like zoomed in version. You see decal, the declination. Latitude, I'm not using it that much. So they're very easy to find. And I like the ephemeris because you can see, you can notice, for example, that now Venus, this is November 2021, and you can see that Venus is now out of bounds, and that can mean something for some people.
Sorry,
So if you would have to start.
Oh.